Okay, hello. Welcome to another Quilting Bee video featuring a new machine. This one is going to be about the new Janome 9480, which is replacing the longtime favorite, the 9450. And so we are going to do a quick rundown on what makes the 9450 and by extension the new 9480 such a good machine. And then we'll hit what's new and special about the 9480, why we should be excited about what is coming. And we'll do a little demo of one of these special accessories that is new and different that the 9480 is capable of using. So briefly, let's talk about where the 9480 and its predecessor, the 9450, is in the Janome line. So the 9480 is a really cool in-between in the upper end Janomes. There is the 6700 Professional, which is their 10-inch throat space, heavy-duty machine with a solid metal base that has a less advanced screen. It's not a touch screen. I call it a calculator screen because that's sort of the graphics it has. And that one is a really nice sort of heavy duty, starting to get bigger type of machine. And then its bigger sister is the M7, which is a 13.5-inch throat space, solid metal, really large, very heavy machine with the advanced touch screen and the advanced capabilities. And the 9450 and 9480 fall right in between. And so it's a mid between 10 inches and 13.5 inches. This one's 11 inches of throat space. So really nice size without being so huge that you're not going to fit it on your existing sewing table. And it has the advanced touch screen that the 6700 does not have. The way that I've always said it is if you love the Skyline series, the S7 or the S9, if you're familiar, you'll love the 9480 and the 9450 because it's just a stretched version of their advanced touchscreen machines. In particular, things that I really love about these advanced touchscreens is the accessibility of variety of features. I personally live with the pivot feature on, in which when I stop sewing, the needle stays down and the foot comes up. Just like that. And so if you do a lot of applique, really fast lift time, because I'm an impatient person, and very easy to turn on and off just right there on screen. That is not the same with all brands, and so I really appreciate that accessibility because it's something that I personally really highly value. In addition, the 9450 and by extension the 9480 has had an extra light on it, and the 9480 light is even better than the 9450s, and so you get that much better visibility. If visibility is something you crave, they have a magnifying adapter that's also capable of being installed over here, and then you can put a magnifier on it, and then you can really see what you're doing. So that's sort of why the 9450 has been such a valuable asset to the Janome line, but the 9480 has some really cool different things that we'll get into now. The biggest difference that I think will impact your everyday experience is the addition of these knobs here. These control the length and the needle position or the width of your stitches. So gone are the days of having to go to your basting stitch by either repeatedly clicking or pressing and holding on screen. Instead, we can just use the knobs. That's nice for those of us who have fancy nails or poor circulation in our fingers where the screen is not as likely to respond to us. Very quick and easy just to crank these one way or the other. And so that's a great addition that they brought in from the M7. Other really cool things that they're introducing are some different modes that you can use. The first is called floating mode, and I'm indicating here on screen the new icon that it represents. And floating mode is like an extension of presser foot pressure. Presser foot pressure, which all Janomes have had control for as long as I've worked here, is the ability to lighten up how hard the foot steps on your fabric. And that's important on squishy or stretchy fabrics because a high level of pressure where the foot's really stomping will stretch or push squishy and stretchy fabrics. And so you want to lighten up in that case, but on very thick or very stretchy fabrics, it just didn't go far enough. And you could tell if you were using minky or very thick fleece, you just wanted an extra level of lightening up. And that's what they've added here. And so when I turn this on, I get a little extra control. There you go. And I'm going to be able to raise the foot. Now I want to show you what it looks like when it's not on. So I've got an extra thick fleece here, and I'm hoping we'll be able to see some pushing and stretching as I sew, because as is, this should have the standard presser foot pressure on it. So you can see how far my foot is sinking down in there. And if I was sewing over a longer piece, I think we would see some pushing where that top layer started to stretch beyond the bottom layer. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Go to floating mode, and we are going to raise our presser foot. You can go too high. This has a big range to it, which I appreciate, but we'll see if I went too far. There we go. So now you can see, hopefully, I'm not squishing down as far into it. Let's see just how crazy high I can go. You can hear it raising. And so those of you who have worked with, say, sewing stuffed animals, minky blankets, things like that, you'll know what I'm talking about with the frustrations of not having a foot that goes high enough up to compensate for that. And so I'm super duper excited about floating mode. Okay, turn that off. The last really cool thing I want to show you that's new on the 9480 is the accurate stitch regulator compatibility. This is a new-ish accessory that they released last year with the M17. That is a stitch regulator, just like you find on a long arm. And the idea of a stitch regulator is it watches your fabric, and it's got a lens for that purpose on the bottom. And it is judging the speed at which you are moving your fabric. And just like a long arm does, it's going to speed up or slow down your needle to make sure your stitches are all the correct length. That's why, you know, the quilts that you send out to be long-armed, besides the fact that you have a very talented long armer, that's why they look so good and so professional, is the machine itself is helping to keep everything regulated and even. And so this machine is compatible, just like the M17 is. It doesn't come with a stitch regulator. You can, you know, get it as an extra, but just the ability of it to take that accessory is a big deal, especially for those of you who are getting an 11-inch thread space in order to do more quilting at home and not sending out your quilts to be done by somebody else. So that's what we're going to check. All right, so we'll start by taking off the regular ankle and sole, because this is a full shank foot. Now, the sole itself is interchangeable. You push on this back release, and then the sole pops off, and it comes with several options, including open-toed, closed-toed, which would be standard, echo quilting, and then this one that I had on there is the ruler foot attachment, and we'll be going more into detail on that, so that's the one I'm going to keep on. And with Janome machines, you always give an extra tighten with a screwdriver, because that screw, you really can't get it finger tight and it will loosen if you don't do the extra turn. Little pro tip. And then in the back, there is a plug-in spot. It's covered by a little door. It's very cute. And it plugs in. Okay. Now, little break for some education. If you get a accurate stitch regulator, or maybe you already have one with your M17, it's not obvious how to get to that mode. So let's do a quick rundown. We are going to go to our t-shirt, which is called Sewing Applications. We are going to go to Free Motion or Quilting Techniques. Quilting Techniques, then technically I am doing ruler work, so we'll go to ruler work, but it would be essentially the same for Free Motion. It says lower your feed dogs. And then let's see if this one, yeah, it does actually. Here's ASR here. And then I've turned on ASR. When you go to the Free Motion page, you sometimes have to select an extra step, which is to select straight stitch 2 or 3, which gives you the ability to raise and lower your foot. But on ruler work, I just had to press ASR, and it's changed my little recommended foot to show the quilting ruler attachment. And so that tells me that it knows what I'm doing. I've done it correctly. So I have quilt sandwich, and I've got a ruler. But before we introduce the ruler, let's just see how the regulation works anyways, even if you didn't have the rulers. All right, because we're good quilters, we might even pull up our bobbin thread. And it really gives you, actually, I'm so used to doing that manually, it actually will do that for you. It has what's called a one stitch stop mode, where if you push on the foot pedal, it'll do one step, and then you're supposed to do that, but I always do it manually. Okay, and then I prefer to run my Free Motion, whether it's regulated or not, from the start stop button, because 3 appendages, 2 hands and 1 foot, is too many for me to monitor. And so we just need to unplug our foot pedal to be able to run from the start stop button. Okay, so from here, we press our start stop, the little light comes on, and we can see if I move slowly, the needle slows down, and if I move quickly, the needle speeds up. And once we've done a little bit, we can clip our threads. Now there is a top speed to all regulators, and there should be a signal when I go too fast. It's doing a little beep. You probably can't hear it, but it is beeping at me that I'm going too fast. That's the limits of its regulation, because it has a top stitching speed, and if you're going too fast, you can't stitch faster than that. So it warns you. And then if you are feeling like it's not responding to some herky-jerkiness that you're doing, which, as you're practicing, you're going to start out herky-jerky, and then you're going to get a little smoother. They have the ability to change the sensitivity of the sensor. That's new and different and special to Janome. Very exciting. So we're going to go to Sewing Settings. And then we've got a setting called ASR sensitivity. It goes up and down, and I'm still refining my sense of which way you go when you're having which issues, but don't just go one way, try going both ways. It does have a setting to turn off that beeper. It won't stop it from failing to regulate. It'll just stop beeping at you when you go too fast. So we could crank up our sensitivity, and in general, it should respond a little faster to my herky-jerky movements. Okay, so much for the basic ASR function. Let's go ahead and add a ruler into the mix, because this is another really special thing about the Accurate Stitch Regulator, is it has that ruler foot. There's no other machine on the market that has a stitch regulator with a purpose-built ruler foot for it. And if you're not familiar with rulers, the idea is to make your stitching more precise. The way I always say it is rulers make you more precise they don't make it easier because you are adding another variable to your quilting. And so I always recommend that you have a little bit of practice doing free motion before you add a ruler, because it just adds one more variable for you to keep track of. I've got my fun wavy ruler here, and you'll notice that I can nestle right into the starting point with my ruler foot sole. And I'm going to keep the ruler and the quilt as a singular body, and I'm going to move both of those at the same time in order to run the foot up against the ruler. Okay, I do need some practice. I can see where I varied a little bit from the ruler, but the idea is rulers are hard. Using this, it takes practice. And so because it's regulating, it's more able to deal with the fact that I slowed down and I stopped when I got to the center of the crevice. And so it should lower that barrier for entry with rulers. You're still going to have to practice. Don't think that you're getting out of practicing, but it should help lower the fear factor of starting to use rulers. So it's a really cool addition. So with that, that was my brief overview of what's new and special with the 9480. It's going to be a really cool, like I said, in between their two heavy duty models, both of which don't have a free arm. This one's the big machine that has a free arm, which means its table comes off. So it's great for people who do garments or bags who need a free arm, but also need a big throat space. And the new additions, the knobs, the ASR compatibility is all just a bonus on top of what was already a really good machine. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that there is another version of this machine coming out. It's called the 9410, and it will be this body, it will be this screen. And so if you like the 11-inch throat space, maybe you liked your 9450 a lot, and there's certain things that you don't feel like you need, you just want the new version of the 9450 with the nicer screen. That's what the 9410 is. It's not going to have the light, it doesn't do the ASR, it doesn't have the knobs, but it is a beautiful pink copper faceplate. That in itself very attractive to me. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be getting that floor model soon. And then in October, you'll be looking forward to the quilt show, all that good stuff. But I also want you to be looking forward to the new M7. I mentioned the M7, it's their big mama. It's the big sewing machine with the 13.5-inch throat space. They're coming out with new versions of the M7, which will have the ASR capabilities. It'll have floating mode. And so those will be called the M6 and the M8. So keep an eye out for that. Those are going to be very exciting. I'm totally biased. I own an M7. I'm in love with it. So this isn't the Quilting Bee telling you. This is Grace. Get excited for the M6 and the M8. All right, we're going to finish up there, and we'll be back with something new and fun in the coming weeks as well.